Yo, so the game High on Life released a little bit ago, and I finally gave it a shot for about 4 hours, and I want to talk about whether the game is worth your time or money. Let's talk about it. Well, first of all, I should warn you that the game is made by the creator of Rick and Morty, so expect a lot of adult humor and a lot of shit talk. If you're not a fan of that kind of humor, it might be a little bit rough around the edges for you. So High on Life is a first-person shooter with kind of open areas in the game. The game is extremely dialogue heavy, and they'll be using this to propel your interest and pace of the game's story as well. There's so much dialogue in this game that you can spend sometimes 10 minutes with a couple of group of people that they just won't shut the fuck up about something.
Fucking move! Hey, where do you want me to fucking go, huh? You want us to just disappear on this fucking traffic? Hey!
Holy shit, where the fuck are we?
Hey, who gives a shit? I got places to be. Fuck you!
Hey, both of you, shut the fuck up!
I'm gonna fucking kill you, shithead!
Move your
Which is, I mean, it's pretty great for those who like it. I like it, for example, so I've been exhausting the dialogue for every character I meet. So it's been interesting. This game is so dialogue heavy that the developers have added a setting in the menu to reduce the amount of interactions between you and the characters around you. Impressive. The game first starts with a little gotcha moment of sorts, of you playing a sci-fi Wolfenstein-inspired like FPS game of sorts, teaching you the basic controls of the game, which is a very interesting way of doing it. It allows the player to learn the basics of the game without really playing the real game and not breaking immersion. After a bit, the main character, which is you, leaves the house and an alien invasion happens right at your doorstep pretty much. An alien shoots another alien in the head, and on the dead guy alien you find Kenny, the talking gun that you've seen about in trailers. You grab him and start slaying all these aliens that are invading. Eventually, you escape Earth and get warped into an alien city. This is where your adventure truly begins from there.
Into space?
Yeah, welcome to fucking space!
The main plot of the game is basically you wanting to save Earth from these aliens that want to literally smoke you. No, literally, they get high off of you, hence the game's name, High on Life. You become a bounty hunter that tracks the main people down of this alien cartel that's invading you, and you try to eliminate them. The story is rather simple, but that's not really the point of the game itself. The plot itself is like a vehicle they use to move the player around to different events and interactions between characters. It's really cool. There are so many different characters that you will meet that it's rather impressive they bothered adding so many voice lines on dudes you'll see pretty much once. There are plenty of scenarios that will happen that'll either get you a chuckle or question your life for a little bit. There's so much dialogue and world building in this game that you can just get lost sometimes in how much they've added. It makes the world feel lived, you know? I think I spent like 30 minutes watching TV in the game with different like stupid things popping up and like shows. And I was gonna see if it loops eventually. It kept going. I stopped watching. But anyway, you're probably wondering on the gameplay part as well, right? Is it fun to play? The gameplay in shooting feels like a discount Doom Eternal, which is not a bad thing. It's just more simple. There will be many weapons that you use throughout the game, and all of them will not shut the fuck up, of course. And it will allow you to combo enemies to oblivion. Personal favorite, I really like that you can throw an AoE bomb with Kenny, and then while they're in the air, you can start shooting them and keep juggling them. It's hilarious, I love it. It has some Doom-style push-forward combat, where you can stab enemies to death with, knifey. And you'll get something out of it. You'll also be able to get a dodge move and stuff like that, and have a bunch of traversing abilities to go around the map. There's a lot of platforming that happens, which makes the fights a lot more fun. The FPS portion of the game is quite satisfying for the most part, but I gotta say that even playing on the hardest difficulty, so far I haven't really felt the hard difficulty. But that's also possible because headshots do so much damage that you can ignore doing a lot of flashy moves sometimes. Even when I felt maybe I can get overwhelmed, I was able to stab most of the big enemies to death. So there's that. But yeah, speaking of traversing, there's actually quite a lot of platforming that happens in this game, which makes exploration more fun throughout the semi-linear open levels. And since you got weapons that double into gadgets, whether it be like a hook to latch on platforms or you can make platforms, it changed the mood of the game from time to time, from it being really dialogue heavy to fighting to just exploration. I'm gonna be honest, I first thought this will be only a dialogue heavy game and nothing else, because usually games like these don't really have the best gameplay, but it's not bad at all. I'd call it above average at the moment. You know, it's not transcending or anything. So far, so good. Alright, now that we've talked about the game in general, let's talk about the options menu and the settings, and later the biggest problems I've experienced in the game so far. So if you're on PC, graphically you'll have a fairly average amount of settings. Nothing special, but one huge flaw. Let's see if you can catch this flaw while I go through this. Let's check the graphic settings. You got your basic window mode to go into full screen, windowed, and full screen windowed. You got resolution options, even though I would prefer a drop-down menu to select the resolution instead of having to click on arrows until I find the resolution I want. This is especially bad if you're on 4K and it was 1080p. That's a lot of clicking. Anyway, VSync on and off. There are no other types of VSync available, so keep that in mind. You got your standard graphics quality presets here, which you can tinker around in the advanced settings as well if you want to customize it. The settings include view distance quality, anti-aliasing quality, shadow, post-processing, textures, effects, foliage, and mesh quality. All settings go from low to very high. There are no ultra settings in this game. Personally, I keep my shadows to medium and foliage on medium, as the game has been dipping in frames into the 40s or so sometimes, specifically during the big fights in the game. For reference, here are my specs, so if you have a weaker system, your results may vary. We thankfully got a motion blur checkmark setting to turn it on and off, which is of course always yes, we turn it off. There's one thing that's missing though in the settings that is extremely necessary, is that you've probably noticed the gameplay you've been seeing is at an extremely narrow FOV. This game has no FOV options whatsoever, which I find kind of shocking that in 2022 we still get games with no FOV slider whatsoever. The default FOV in this game is 70, so you pretty much have to deal with that, unfortunately, at least for now. Looking at the developers news for updates, I haven't seen any mention on them adding a FOV slider. So anybody that gets massive motion sickness from this, you're straight out of luck. However, there is a workaround to increase the FOV yourself using a cheat engine. Only problem is that this will reset on every reboot of the game, and the configuration for this is pretty repetitive to do. And it resets on ADS and dashing. You can fix that too, it's just again you have to do it on every boot and it takes a little bit. So yeah, this is a huge problem that I'd like them to tackle, but honestly, I doubt that this will happen, even though this would be an incredibly easy option to add to the game. This game is made in Unreal Engine, so it would be pretty straightforward to add this option. Alright, next, input settings. You got your normal sensitivity settings for controller and mouse, and it's separated with the ADS speed as well, so that's great. You can rebind any key you want on PC, so that's good for player comfort. On the other hand, if I go to the controller settings, you'll see that you're unable to remap the buttons in any way in-game, so you're stuck with the default. For accessibility reasons, it would be great for the controller users to be able to remap whatever they want, but yeah, I guess it is what it is. Audio-wise, you got pretty much everything you need: master volume, sound effects, music, voice. Also, like mentioned before, you can reduce or flat out disable specific dialogue for the enemies or your guns if you find that annoying, so that's a big plus. Alright, so to recap. High on Life is a greatly written, dialogue-heavy FPS game with a bunch of adult humor in the mix. This will drive you to continue playing the game and set you up for different funny or fucked up scenarios. The gameplay style itself is fun as well and feels like a more simple version of the push-forward combat that you get in Doom games, allowing you to chain, mix and match different weapons and avoiding damage with a plethora of like movement mechanics and dodging. The world is immersive and extremely well built, full of detail, a lot of Easter eggs, things to look at and people to talk or listen to. So far, this semi-linear FPS adventure game has been a pretty good time for me. I'm looking forward to playing more of it, to be honest. The game itself isn't incredibly challenging, but still very fun to play and explore. You don't see games like these very often, so enjoy it thoroughly if you like this type of humor. Go give this a try if you were skeptical before, it's a good time. For PC players though, you might want to hold off on the game if you do get motion sickness. Like I said, with the terrible FOV, it's kind of rough. I'll update you in the comments section or the description if this ever gets changed. The game is available for free if you own the Xbox Game Pass, so there's really no harm done to give it a try anyway and see for yourself. But yeah, that's it. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful, and yeah, thanks for watching.